Hello, wise people, and welcome back to another episode of our Rome recap series. Today, we touched on some really interesting topics, starting with the direction of thoughts. How by keeping track of your thoughts and by noting them down and referencing them, you were able to see which direction they were going in, allowing you to pick up where you came from and to continue your chain of thought. We then dove into gymnastics and how its ethos of training your muscles' full range of motion compares to the standardised methods in gyms that predominantly focus on concentrated movements. We also talked a lot about how music affects our emotions and whether producing music can be used as a way of training your internal gauge or intuition. Finally, towards the end of the episode, we explore attachment theory and how children acquire three main assumptions as they come into this world. These being the world is benevolent, the world is meaningful, and finally that the self is worthy. Now, if any of that sounds interesting or piques your curiosity, do give it a listen. And if you just so happen to enjoy this beautiful episode, do let us know by leaving a like or a comment in the section below, or even better, give us a follow or a subscribe. That way you'll always be kept up to date on all of our beautiful content that we bring you. Now, with all of that said and done, I hope you enjoyed this Rome recap. All right. So today, this week or the last couple of weeks, what have I actually been thinking about?
I was going to say my room is relatively empty in the sense of, apart from being a to-do list, but I've got a bunch of notes from things I've been reading. So
Oh, yeah?
I'll touch on that later, but I would love to, I mean, what are you putting in at the moment? Are you putting in abstract thoughts, or you just...
Well, I've been working on because I've been working to try and design my room. A lot of it has just been based on trying to build a system that captures everything. I've been exploring the Zettelkasten system and going over my how to make smart notes.
Yeah.
I have three different pages that open. So I've got fleeting notes, literature notes, and permanent notes that are all on my kind of front page. So then if I make now, I think I was talking to you about this a couple of weeks ago, but the idea that you're constantly making loads of thoughts, they're just not all related, right? So what I'm thinking about right now may be different what I'm thinking about in half an hour, and they're not necessarily linked, right? But I might have a thought later on when I go to bed that is linked to the thought that I'm having now. So that's that line of thought, right? But unless I capture all my thoughts, there's no way to kind of link it. I'm not capturing this one, so I can't link the one later on when I'm going to bed. So now I basically just started to create a source. So I had this thought when I was, doing a podcast with Jes.
Yeah.
And then later on, let's say I have a thought that's linked to this one. I put a link and I'd be I link this one to the previous thought. So then I can open that and I can see the chain of thought. And it's so this is the trajectory. Exactly. Yeah. If you know the point A and you know which direction it's going in, then you can kind of follow.
I guess in a weird way, it's kind of when you think of something and you got it in your mind, then you forget where the thought came from originally, and why it's in your head. It's kind of living there rent free without any context.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, the amount of times I've looked back at you think you've had a really prolific thought. You think, you've just discovered the meaning of the universe or something, and you wrote it down. You're like, oh my God. And then you go back to a couple of days later, you're like, what was I thinking? Was I crazy? What, as in, I don't get what I was trying to say because I don't know anything other than this one sentence. If that makes sense, you don't have the reason for why you thought that thought. Yeah.
Well, this is it. And I found that in one of, I think it was in How to Take Smart Notes, he was talking about the whole Zettelkasten system kind of thing isn't about just storing everything. It's about retrieval, right? So when you make your kind of tags, it's about, well, how can I apply this, or how can I come across this later on? And it was kind of that kind of dawned on me in the sense that I want to be able to come back and look at my thought and know which direction it was going in. If I'm just thinking about gymnastics or something, then I I could apply that to 1,000 different things. But if I know which direction it's going in, like, gymnastics with biomechanics and then this and then this, I know that it was going that direction. I can follow that train of thought.
I was also say it makes sense. I guess in a weird way, thoughts are always directional. Like, they're always kind of going somewhere because you've almost posed a question. Or do you kind of what I mean?
Absolutely.
It comes from somewhere, and they call it a train of thought or trailer thought. It's train, right?
I guess like they're both the same kind of thing. I
think it is train of thought. Like,
I think it also say chain of thought. Like you could do chains, like links. I don't know, like
chain. Okay, there you go. Exactly. That's what I mean. So it's not isolated. If that and that's interesting to make that note of understanding where it originated from, to sort of see it as it progressed. So it's not just like a random thought, like, I don't know, some observation you've made without any context to why it matters.
Well, this is it. And then I think what's interesting, right, is like, in films where there's like a time kind of film where people go back in time, but then their future is their past because they're just going like this, like a loop.
Oh yeah, they're
right?
looping, yeah.
So if you think about that with like thoughts, okay, I've had loads of thoughts in between, but this train of thought, I'm going that, and then I'm back visiting it.
And then you can build on it, yeah.
But then I've acquired loads of other stuff. So when I jump back to look at this one, I can then make other links. And that's kind of what Rome allows you to do with the bidirectional links, doesn't it?
Interestingly, that's why I think people say writing is the best form of thinking, because you put it down on the paper so you can't forget the sort of, if you start from the origins of where you were trying to make your point, you can reread it and then you go, oh wow, like that's exactly how I got from this point to point B of what I was trying to explain. Yeah. And like you said, you can either then rethink, oh, was I even right in this sort of chain? But also if you read more and you learn more, then you'll be like, okay, I got to this point of where my thought has gone. Maybe I can add more to it up here.
Exactly.
It's quite interesting, I think. But yeah.
And I really liked, because I had to do this kind of presentation for my research group a couple of weeks ago, but I liked what he said in terms of like, you never start with a blank slate. You never start at like step one, because you've acquired all this other stuff. So let's say, I've got an essay due on emotion. I've acquired and accumulated all this information about emotion. Okay. Yeah. I put it in there, what's relevant to, let's say, the essay question. And then I see where the gaps are. And I see like, okay, well, this is what I need to actively go and find, but I've still got like quite a good deal of like quite a large amount of information here. And what I find really annoying with uni is that, they'll give you a question and they expect you to like, unless you're doing this kind of technique, then you're starting at step one, right? So then if I have to argue whether this is this side or that side, well, then whatever I'm going to actively go and find is biased. There's confirmation bias there. I've already made up my mind whether this agrees or that agrees. Yeah. And I go finding that information because I can always find opposite information that isn't strong enough to make my side look better.
Yeah, of course. Well, it's essentially you're learning how to argue, right? That's one of Peterson's main points about university almost.
But this is it. But what I find interesting is that if you don't actively do that, let's say I'm just interested in gymnastics and I don't actually have a goal, I'm just interested in it. If I find two contrasting ideas, it doesn't have the same weight. I'm not biased in the same sense until when I come and I start writing, I've already taken those two. Do you get what I mean? So it's like I'm not being as biased. Like you can never get rid of it, but like you're kind of reducing it in a way.
Because of the fact that you haven't been forced to be the for and against for specific points.
Exactly. You're just accumulating stuff that is about a certain topic in a way.
Okay. Yeah, I can see it. Oh yeah, I don't agree with the whole for and against, finding arguments. What I did. Well, it was a useful exercise, I guess.
But yeah, I think absolutely. But it's just quite hard, I find. Because I know that like a lot of my essays that I write about like what I think is the answer, and then I go looking for the papers to back it up. I don't go looking for the papers and then write my stuff.
Yeah, it's quite interesting you say that, just because of so you sort of you come in with the theory in advance and you're sort of just constructing arguments, but that's what effectively the confirmation bias, isn't it? Really,
exactly.
But this is like, I was reading Shatter's Assumptions. I'm literally 2 chapters in. The second chapter is called like cognitive conservatism. And it basically just talks about how the way your brain's made is you can never, ever look at the world without having a preconceived idea of what you're looking for. If that makes sense. So you can't actually ever learn or look at something without having a preconceived structure of what you're actually looking for. So in the case of you studying for your exam, studying for doing your essay, you've got an idea of where you want to take the argument. You're obviously then going to structure your thoughts around that argument. I'll tell you something I've realized that I quite like doing is always, as you're speaking, trying to figure out how you could be wrong. So like, as you're speaking about something, I always try and figure out where I could be wrong. And obviously there's a long list always at all times, but it's always difficult. It's always good to start from that than it is to start from like, let's search for why I'm right. Because if you want to search for why you're right, you're always going to find it.
Well, that's Popper's law, isn't it?
Well, yeah, but it's not even just that. I think from this book, it actually kind of talks about this idea that a lot of human suffering comes from this idea that our brains are wired to sort of find what we want. So let's just say you were in a place where you not that you wanted to believe you were worse off, but you have it in your head that you're not good at something or you're not worthy enough. You will then actively look out for the reasons why or the behavior of people which could confirm it. And a lot of people's behavior is or a lot of the world is ambiguous, right? The signal of is this person's reaction to you the truth, or are they having a bad day? Like if somebody gets really aggressive towards you, and then this idea that you then read into these ambiguous signals, and then you can further confirm this idea. So I think it's always quite good on a weird note about obviously with the essay, like to be able to just be like, right, okay, this is my argument. How many ways could it be wrong?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
It's like probably the first step, I would say.
Yeah.
And I say this, but it's not something you can actively do every day in your life. I mean, getting an argument with your brother or sister, and you're not going to be looking for this confirmation of why you're wrong. I mean, why you're right. Yeah,
no, exactly. Which I wonder I wonder if you're more likely to look for disconfirming evidence in a scenario that is least taxing to reputation.
Okay. Yeah.
Losing face in front of certain people, has different outcomes.
Yeah. What do you mean? You're more likely to? I think you're less likely to look for the reasons why you're wrong if you're you're arguing in front of people as well, right? You're not.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's almost why I think is actually a counter signal, though. So if you're somebody who actively, admits you're wrong in public, I think people actually look at it as almost heroism to some degree, because not many people be willing to be like, oh, hands up, I did it wrong.
Well, it's now the rare trait, isn't it?
Exactly, and that's what I'm saying. It's now a counter signal, right? Because beforehand it was, you don't want to be seen as wrong, but now because we're so obsessed with not being wrong, that the ability to put your hands up and be like, fucking hell, I got it wrong. Sorry, guys.
Yeah.
I mean, we could go into politics, but not. I think this hands up on a plate, isn't it? Yeah. But it's I know you're right with you 100%. You just want to. I guess then you've got to boil it down to why you even argue with this person in the first place. Because you want to be right, or do you want to win the argument and look superior sometimes in terms of arguing? Like, this is in person, right? This is not essays.
Yeah, well, this is it, isn't it? It's like technically your brain doesn't know what's true.
Mm-hmm.
Like it doesn't care about what's true. It cares about like what is best for survival and sexual reproduction. Yeah. So like I guess that's kind of like the root motive.
So it's interesting, because you don't even realize half the time sometimes you're arguing not because you want to be right, but because you want to be perceived as right. Why do you want to be perceived as right? Because you want people to respect you, I guess.
And then it's interesting because then the more you argue, the more you invest into your opinion, so that even if you become aware that you may be wrong, it's like cognitive dissonance now. It's like you've invested so much into it that you can't back out now.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
That's how it all ends up, really. That's why they call people stubborn, I guess. Like stubbornness almost gets even worse. The moment you call somebody stubborn, they're going to be even more stubborn because they're going to be like, "No, I'm not stubborn." And then if they back down, I guess I don't know. I guess if you back down, then you prove yourself to be unstubborn. I don't know. But yeah, what else? What else have you been? What you got on your roam then?
Well, things that I've been like at the like kind of front of my mind the last couple of weeks. So I told you I just like started gymnastics. Because it's been on my mind for quite a long time, to be fair. I only just recently got into a position where I was actually actively looking. But just the idea that, like, you know, first of all, you've got your skeletal system, okay, and then you've got your muscles, but your muscles are a byproduct kind of your movement. So your movement needs to be good first, and then your muscles need to develop from that movement, right? So if I'm only ever doing bicep curls, I'm only ever training my biceps in a specific way. Yeah, but like it's interesting because, you know, there's a lot more full range of motion that our muscles have than the kind of binary mechanic ways that like, for instance, you use in the gym or something like that. And so I found that very interesting because it's almost like deconditioning myself of doing certain movements that I've done for many years, like in the gym and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And now it's like, you know, like I went to a strength and conditioning one last week, right? And we were just doing compression. So the idea that, like, let's say you've got like a belt around your stomach and you're pushing out and then you're like crunching down, and a lot of it like hits your lower abs. But we're doing very, very basic exercises, and it was exhausting. And you just realize certain muscles that you just never
engage them, right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Because like you've never needed to, or there's not like a machine for that, or, you know, the fitness industry doesn't really touch on that. And it's interesting. And I'm kind of interested in, like, I want to find a book that I couldn't really find any, but on like the origins of gymnastics and how this came to be, like where this all came from, you know, certain movements and how they tackle like a lot. So much is about the core, and like and flexibility, like joints and everything like that. So I think it's very healthy for you. And this always also was touching on like the body keeps the score, in the sense of, like, you know, syncing your body and your mind. Yeah, in a way, because it's like, you know, it's exhausting. There's a lot of mental energy there that like you have to try and overcome. And then also I'm like interested in like kind of rhythmic stuff, like whether that would be like capoeira or something like that, because you're all just, you know, it's very holistic. I'm looking at the like whole now rather than just compartments. And I want to tackle my body in that kind of sense. But that's kind of been on forefront of my brain at the moment.
It does make a lot of sense. I do Pilates like once a week now, and it's just it's crazy how much, you know, how weak our cores are, or like we don't engage the muscles. Like I do stuff like go down on all fours, right, and you lift one so like your right arm and left leg at the same time, doing like mini Superman sort of things, right? And you do that, and then you've got to try and keep your pelvis still. And the moment you start actually focusing on keeping stuff still and just moving certain aspects, you then start realizing, oh crap, actually I've never been moving properly. I've been, you know, I don't have a core essentially.
But join the club.
Gymnastics people, and you see them all, and you're just like, wow, that incredible strength, like to hold, you know, people up, or like
this woman who teaches us. She's pretty small. Okay, she's pretty like petite. But she's an absolute tank. Like, you know, her like I thought I was vascular. Her basically, she's like inside out. Her fucking veins are just so prominent. But anyway, we're doing what we were doing the other day. We're doing like these kind of like planks, but like properly. I didn't realize that, you know, she's really trying to teach you like the form. And anyway, there's this guy in our class who weighs 95 kilos, and we were all supposed to have like a partner sit on our back when we were doing this plank, and no one could do this like 95 kilo guy. And she was like, look, I'll try it. And it was just fucking easy for her. Like she didn't even budge, or like, she was like, this is fine. Like, you know, you just need to learn to like really.
It's pretty heavy as well. Yeah.
And this guy's a big guy, you know, and it was just like, it was ridiculous, but it just goes to show you that like muscle mass is not an equivalent of strength. You know, a muscle has a certain potential for strength. And if you can fulfill that, and we've talked about this before, I think, but like, it's like really filling that potential first before you try to then grow loads of mass. You see loads of people in the gym and it's like, oh, they build so much mass, but like for the equivalent of what they weigh, it's fuck all.
You've already inspired me. I've literally just googled classes in.
Yeah, mate, I was looking
I'm
it up
kind
in
of like,
Bristol the other day.
yeah, I'm quite intrigued at least to give it a go.
Yeah, but also it's what I find interesting is that it's like, so Liam does it with me
Okay,
now and then on the odd class, and he's rather kind of stiff, okay,
okay,
like moving in certain directions, and I find it really interesting because it's like, for instance, people doing a cartwheel, it should be pretty straightforward, right? But
yeah,
loads of people can't do it, and it's because like they've never even moved their body in that way.
in that way, yeah,
And it's
yeah,
just like they've never done that. So your muscles end up tightening and only moving in certain ways. So it's like I said just before, you have to kind of almost decondition that.
yeah. It gets pretty. I mean, everybody's pretty much a slave to it in terms of the fact they always stay, sat down during the day, especially office-based jobs.
Oh yeah.
Me, I'm convinced like bad backs and stuff is a real sort of, that's the real pandemic.
Mate, look, I've got my little cushion here.
Oh, you got this fucking lumbar thing, yeah.
Yeah, fucking hell.
I used to have one of those. I'll tell you what I've been doing. I've been doing like proper hip and glute stretches, and oh my god, as men, we are terrible for it.
Yeah, we're dreadful.
I tried. I'm gonna have to. Do you know what, tomorrow I'm gonna get up early and actually go do some stretching. I think because right now, to be honest, after this call, I'll probably do the same thing. It's crazy, and it's stuff you just don't really. I don't know. You never really get told the benefits of it, right? You never like get told I was stretching or like, for example, even gymnastics, right? Everybody goes, "Oh, go to the gym. You're going to get really ripped and strong." If somebody said to you, if you did gymnastics, you'd be even more ripped and even more strong.
And like you're talking about like no better athlete really has a better body. I don't think.
Yeah,
even bodybuilders, they're out of proportion and they look ridiculous most of the time.
They definitely look like they genuinely look like gorillas, like because they're so big, and they can't even make. They're a prime example of why they can't even move, can they? Like, rrr, rrr. Whereas the gymnasts are like, woohoo! They got full rotation.
Yeah. And, there's a quote, I don't know who it's by, but it's like, your body's a tool, not an ornament. And it just like made me like started thinking like, I can get behind why people want like certain bodies, right? So you have like strong men, and I don't think it's particularly healthy. I think like, your skeleton is not supposed to endure that much weight. But if you want to be that strong man, then fine. That's the trade-off that you're going for. And it's like, I can absolutely respect. It's just so much work and, so much resilience to even get to that point. But,
if you built different as well, relatively, like there is a level of genetics there as well. Like you have to be a big guy. They're all the same build, God, like you said. Actually, that's an interesting point. They're all the same build. Like bodybuilders are all relatively the same build. The big sort of strong men are all relatively the same build because you have to adapt to the sort of thing you're doing, right? Whereas gymnasts are all relatively of the same build. And like you said, it's probably the best build in terms of like best flexibility, best sort of almost looking build as well. I would say.
Well, this is it, and I think like it depends on the utility. So many people, they try to go to the gym and it's a lot of it is based on like the surface level. It's like, oh, I just want to look good.
Yeah.
But you're not actually doing yourself any good. So you're probably going to look worse later on because you're either out of proportion or like, you can't move properly or your muscles aren't relaxed and you have sciatica, which causes so many other problems, And so it's interesting because like, I'm just getting to a point where like I don't give a shit about being the big guy at the gym. Like my ego is not that fragile, and so now it's just all about.
It's also a lot of hard work. The big guy at the gym because the amount of fucking food you have to eat to get to that size, man, it's ridiculous.
And then that depends if you're eating properly rather than like
we got such a high metabolism. I reckon we really struggle to put on weight.
Well, this is it, but also it's like the quality of your diet. It's like, are you just eating chicken and rice every day?
Oh God, yeah.
And it's like straight away. Well, your organs are like deprived of nutrition, all these kinds of things. Now, I think my kind of point towards this is just like I just want to do things that are not for the face value aspect of it. I don't give it like it's kind of weird because in England, like gymnastics doesn't seem to be that big of a thing. Even though I would say it's probably one of the healthiest forms of exercise or physical exercise because you're activating the whole body. And yet, like, finding a place in London that does it, especially for adults, was like fucking rare.
It looked really quite hard then. Even in Bristol, it looked quite hard to find somebody.
Yeah.
You really want to like a gymnastics class that goes regularly, don't you? And just go. You need to start at the beginning level as well, which I'm sure people don't have the patience for.
Well, yeah, but then again, that's kind of like a lot of things, isn't it? If you're starting any skill.
True, of course. Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think it's just like overlook the kind of the surface level aspect of something and just go for like, what's the long term option here? It's more health. I want to be able to move. I don't want to have like, terrible posture when I'm older and like be humped, hunched.
Yeah.
Be humped.
Yeah. People want to be humped.
I don't want to be humped when I'm older, okay?
Boring old age.
Yeah, bloody hell. Yeah, no, if only. But yeah, no, that's kind of just been at the thing that I've been focusing on recently.
You've actually relatively inspired me. I'm enjoying my sport at the moment, so I'll definitely pick it up, and it makes a lot of sense in terms of a wider range of motion. Being strong in multiple dimensions instead of just being. You could almost argue like mentally as well, cognitive diversity in terms of looking at opposing viewpoints, reading itself, just reading different topics and stuff.
Yeah.
Spreading out your general sort of movement of strength. I mean, if you could read the same book about the same subject again and again and again and not learn anything new, I mean, you're just going to end up being really directional in terms of how you look at everything, because you can look at it just through that lens rather than...
You end up being a specialist in that book, but then you don't know anything else,
Yeah.
And then is that book something healthy that you should be reading in a way?
True. Well, I think anything...
I'm trying to draw the metaphor here, but like, I'm not sure if that's working, but...
Yeah, I think anything taken to the extreme doesn't really help in terms of like extreme training in one direction. Obviously, you're going to be overcompensating for that one direction. It's the same with your brain, I guess. And, completely seeing everything the same way eventually... it's critical race theory, bringing everything down to race. It's, overuse of a specific frame of reference or specific lens to view the world. Not that the lens doesn't reveal things that are like injustices, just if it's overused. But like if you overdo the biceps, everything becomes about it. And then all of a sudden you're constrained to move in a different direction.
But this is it. And it's like trying to get away from that kind of dogmatic perspective that you just follow one thing. Like if I follow my like journey from the gym, okay, well, I used to start going to the gym. I used to love it. And then I started to get into like reduce loads of weight and just focused on form.
Yeah.
And then form has led me to like, okay, well now calisthenics, because it's just like body weights and it's just focusing on that kind of form. And now calisthenics has led me to kind of gymnastics. But like that whole kind of transition is like, you find it for yourself, everything has to have meaning to yourself. But like, I'm finding
what I find really interesting is the transition from mainstream to less mainstream is usually the pathway to becoming good at something, or the pathway to the best gains. So the way I look at it in that sense is, I remember when I first started, going to the gym and stuff, and where do you go when you're the first person to sort of, when you're first trying to go to the gym? You can look at like Men's Health. You look at all these websites where they basically flogging you protein shakes, right? So I almost started off with that level of like mass, produced protein shakes, inorganic, telling you what to do, how to work out. And it's like you just said, it's like barbell curls. It's like just strictly doing the same exercises again and again. Yeah. And I remember that not really working. And then I moved on to mass gainers, and because you're basically trying to find solutions from these people. And then all of a sudden, I remember I got into Greg Kino Body. Remember him? Greg Gallagher. He's still kicking about. He introduced me to the concept of intermittent fasting, which has grown on me. And now
pretty much do it every day, don't you?
Every day. Like I don't eat till like 1, and I love it. Like I'm just on black coffee, and I find it's really good. I just, simplifies my life, and I actually quite like doing it. But just moving from that mindset of like what the mass media tell you, you have to have protein shakes, you have to eat all the time, to not eating very much is crazy. And then it still works. But
then also for what reason? That's what I think is interesting. It's like, okay, you can do this, but is it purely just to gain muscle? And why do you just want to purely gain muscle?
I think my reasons have changed over time. Like back when I was younger, you were more impressionable, so you wanted to be that, not the meathead, but you wanted to be like ripped.
Yeah.
And now it's got to the point where like I'm pretty, like, I have to say, in regards to healthiness, and because I'm playing so much sport at the moment with the cricket and stuff,
Yeah.
I'm up there with the healthiest I've been since leaving school. And that's not saying much because I haven't been that healthy since leaving school.
But what about your mind?
My mind, I'd say, is better for
But
it.
that's my point.
Yeah.
As in, like,
Yeah.
you're doing something that is fun, and I would always choose sport 100% over going to the gym.
Yeah.
Like, I like the gym, don't get me wrong, but like, you get so many other benefits from, playing sport. Like, I love playing squash or tennis or whatever. And if I can try and fit that round, then yeah, I'd much prefer to do that, because I'm not trying to, just build mass constantly. And most of the time you end up staying a pretty good shape, which is a normal shape,
Yeah. Interestingly, that's kind of what everybody perpetuates, is like that big mass is what people want to be. Girls don't even find it that particularly attractive. So then you have to ask yourself, why do boys want it? And sometimes it's to look,
male attraction.
Admiration. I think it's admiration from people to be like, wow, you're a big dude.
Yeah.
I make it a mission of mine these days. If I see somebody who's been going to the gym and I haven't seen them in ages, I always would be like, oh, you're looking good, because there's nothing better than somebody, if you put
it's true.
Gym, somebody going, oh, like, you look like you're doing all right at the moment. Because I just know I know that's actually what people want when they go to the gym. It's like, that is literally the recognition that almost drives it in a weird way.
But this is what I find interesting, is because, like, you can pick any kind of any one of these kind of disciplines, and still the byproduct, like, you can make the byproduct still be like muscle mass. You can still chase after muscle mass, but in a way that, like, either is more enjoyable or more healthy or whatnot. Like, you look at gymnasts and they're absolutely fucking stacked. Like, it's actually ridiculous. Like, they're like, you look up, like, people who are, like, do the rings, and their shoulders are like, bam, their arms are huge, but it's all kind of proportional, so it looks pretty good. But so
and they're not even doing. They do some weights though. Don't get me wrong, they do. But yeah, so I just think it's really. I think originally the direction I was taking the conversation was more like how the fringe things or fringe actions tend to be the ones that are best for you, because once big corp or like once there's money to be made, the message kind of gets distorted to make the most money. It gets distorted to, you have to have lots of protein shakes, you have to do this, you have to do that. Not, you just have to eat relatively well, make sure you're eating healthy, and just regularly work out, and regularly do the exercises, and it'll compound over time. And you're not told that. Of course you're not told that, because if they told you, oh, by the way, you want to get ripped, but it's going to take you, a year, you don't want to hear that. That's why everything's always the 6 tips, the fastest fat loss. And it's because everybody can't bother to put the effort in, because if they told you the truth, you wouldn't do it. And then they feed you, all this shit. This is why I come to this conclusion over, I mean, I know you've already been on board with this for years, but like, the more you look at it, it's just like, it's tipped, convincing everybody it's easy to get hold of, and it's, it's simple, and like, if you follow their shortcuts and tips and tricks, you'll get there.
Well, this is it. And it's not like you can't learn anything, but I think it's interesting, like, touching on your point, is that, most of these alternative kind of things that are not the mainstream end up being a bit more holistic. And the kind of journey that society takes in general is, well, we take the function out of this, or we take something out of that, and we end up taking a concentrated element of it. So, you take a sport, and then you take one exercise, and then you build a machine for that exercise, and then you say it's supposed to be a certain amount of reps, and then this. And it's just like you're constantly going from like a broad to very, 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 very narrow.
Yeah.
You do this with everything. It's like everything is very concentrated. And so, yes, you're getting a result, but it's just so specific, and it's completely detached from like what it came from originally. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you need to be able to apply it back to that kind of situation. But like, I think what was interesting is I was watching like a YouTube video or something about gymnastics, and the guy was like, you could take a gymnast, and because he's kind of rooted in all of the key areas of movement, you could pretty much put him into any sport, and he'll pretty much succeed, or like he'll do pretty well, for a natural kind of guy.
There's a transferable skill, isn't there? I thought a lot about it, like, just in general, being being lean and being quick, or just being like relatively sporty in general in terms of athletic build,
Yeah.
you can translate across many sports because you can already do things other people can't do.
But then you do the opposite and you try to put someone into gymnastics. Like, I thought I was fairly capable, but fucking hell, it's just so difficult. And like, you could see someone who you wouldn't think is capable at all, and they
can really good.
So it's interesting. And yeah, I think I remember like watching something on Ido Portal. Do you know who he is? I think I mentioned. And the idea that like, movement is like, certain kind of things like agility, flexibility, endurance, all these kind of different things. Yeah. And then those kind of things can be transferable to different areas. And obviously sports are made up of different things, But yeah, interesting.
It is. I'm gonna genuinely look it up and see what I can do. But yeah. After then gymnastics, what else? Anything else that's been on your roam? Anything you've been reading? Anything that's top of your mind? Because after all, this is let me have a little look at my other room.
Oh, I was thinking about I had this thought the other day. I was talking to some guy in a queue, I think, about like, I think he did like music production or something.
Okay.
And I was just thinking it's quite interesting because we talk about like our internal gauge, right? Like I've spoken about it a bit. The idea of like I remember watching John Cleese and he was talking about creativity, and it's basically like based on a different language, your kind of implicit feeling about something. Your feeling is different. It's separate from like your logic. They're two different things. And letting your kind of intuition, that's what your intuition is, your feeling about something. Anyway, I was just thinking like, if you're creating music, right, that's something completely subjective. It's not like you're using logic to do it. It's like you're making music and you either think it sounds good or you think it doesn't, right? So it's almost like, let's say I start playing a tune. If I like it, then that's me reacting. So it's almost like music can kind of train your internal gauge in a way, if you get what I mean. Because it's the only thing, it's not like, oh, I can understand that. It's not like you're understanding the music unless you are like trained in music and you can, know what's going on in the background. But it's more feeling, isn't it? It's about feeling. So like if you create a song and then certain people can like certain bits of the song, it's kind of interesting because that's the only way that you can kind of connect to someone else's subjective feeling, if you get what I mean. It's like I've created this, and parts of my song someone else can relate to. So it's like that's triggering their internal gauge. Don't know. It was just a random thought I had the other day. But
Is it so somebody creates their own song and obviously they like their own song, and then somebody else likes it? That's what you mean, like they're sort of like channeling up their agreement on what something means. I don't know. I kind of get what you mean. Like
it's kind of like you don't really have we communicate through language and through logic, and that's how we speak to one another. You can't how do you talk to another person through like feelings? How does someone else understand your feelings? Because a language isn't really that great at expressing it because it's always completely subjective interpretation, right?
Language is also used. There's a proto-language. There's stuff before language, like tonality and other things, which like almost talk more than the language does.
Exactly. That's normally the underlying thing, or the subtext, or the implicit meaning behind something.
That. Yeah.
And it's kind of interesting that music is kind of another thing like that. So if you're creating music and someone else can like bits of that music, it's almost like these two things are talking to each other.
Yeah. I find it interesting only because also music is very like synchronous in terms of with emotions, like emotional states. Like in movies, you always have the same music for the same specific scenes. Like if it's a cool scene, it's usually like rock music or some sort of epic, orchestra music. And then for sad songs, it's usually piano based or like slower. There is some reality to like emotions being, musically translated, possibly, if that makes any sense. Like there is an actual like vibrancy. I haven't read that book. I got a book as well on it, like your brain on music. I think you looked into it too, right?
I think so.
But I'd be interested. I think the Gödel Escher Bach book is all about how music actually sort of syncs up, I think, or part of it. But I think there's something there, because obviously why would you use, like, you hear music and it immediately conveys an emotion rather than it conveys words.
Yeah.
Like the words in a song usually convey less than the actual sort of speed, tempo,
Yeah.
etc. And I'm butchering that for somebody who doesn't know music, but I'm sure somebody who understood it more would actually know the actual reasoning for it, because I'm sure there is something. It's like a musician, somebody who guides you through emotions in my head, relatively.
Well, yeah, in some sense of it, yeah.
Yeah. They know what causes what. Like Hans Zimmer doing a score for a film, he feels what the film needs in that moment, and he produces the sound which links that feeling. That's what I guess that's the argument that you're having, is like they use the subjective
But this is
feeling,
my point. You're kind of, if you, let's say a lot of people aren't in touch with their emotions, right? Okay, and aren't in touch with their feelings. So the more you do something, right, maybe the more you train your ability to understand your emotions. So you're talking about Hans Zimmer, the same with like Mozart, right?
Okay.
They know they've conquered music basically to a degree, but it's almost becomes like from the confidence in knowing that what you feel when you're making something is something that someone else will be able to feel. Do you know what I mean?
Common humanity, yeah. Like
And it's strange, but like it's almost like because you're constantly activating this part in you, your ability to react emotionally to something, you're able to be like, oh, well, this is what this,
judge somebody else would be like, yeah, because you've sort of got into the common subjective reaction to a specific sound, or I get it. It's almost like why being empathy comes from the ability to like realize that the thing you're doing now would upset you, so therefore it would upset somebody else, and being able to like put yourself in people's shoes, if that makes sense. Well, is what empathy is, right? It's the ability to like realize that the emotions you're feeling when somebody says this and says that, somebody else would probably feel the same emotions, because we have a common, not all, but most people have a common level of like understanding with that, or common, if somebody was being, shouted at or something, or somebody was being bullied, if you've been bullied yourself, you could then put yourself in the shoes, whereas the bully couldn't himself, if that makes sense. So the more you sort of get experience and realize, like you said, get in touch with your emotions, probably the best way. Oh, that made me feel sad. Therefore, if I see this happening to somebody else, I will step in and not make them feel sad.
Yeah.
That's, I think, how you probably get to a better level of human understanding, I guess, by being, like you said, in touch with your emotions. To then realize that everybody else is touched by them in similar ways, in similar situations, like you said with the music. So like, oh, they feel this music touches my soul in this way, therefore I would assume it might do it the same for others.
Which is interesting, because like if you think that, we all have different experiences, and some people who have, let's say had terrible things happen, have a different spectrum of sadness. There's a difference between like being sad watching a film and being sad because a loved one's died, So it's quite interesting that like someone could make music based on their experiences, but that could either be a lot or not, and someone else is reacting with their spectrum.
Mm-hmm. It could also be on an experience they've imagined, though, as well, right? Like,
say that again.
I'm sure it could also be on an experience they've imagined, so it doesn't have to just be their experience. It could be like, oh, I imagine if I was,
but then,
this happened to me.
But then, is imagining it not still rooted in like you can only imagine a feeling based on a feeling that you've had? Like you don't know what it would be like to lose like a child, because the only sadness that you have is based on real experience.
Possibly. I think you can make yourself pretty sad by playing the thing in your mind as if it was real. And
but my point being is in like it would still be the same kind of sadness. If like the worst thing that had happened to me was like, I don't know, I don't know.
Make it up, you do.
Okay, let's say like a neighbor died. Okay, I'd be sad, but it wouldn't be the same kind of sadness as if I lost a son, right?
Yeah.
So if I imagined losing a son, I would only be able to imagine it with the sadness of my worst sadness, which is so far losing a neighbor.
Possibly, I do. I personally think you'd be able to. You'd never feel it the way you would feel if it actually happened, but like what are dreams? Like dreams, you can be terrified.
What are dreams for?
You can be terrified in like fine nightmares. Let's go with that instead.
Yeah.
You could be terrified in nightmares. Like I've have my scariest experiences ever in nightmares than I have in real life. So I don't. because I think your imagination can't, your brain doesn't know the difference between reality and imagination, because you're not aware of your sleepiness, that like when you're asleep. So therefore, I'm not convinced.
No, I agree. I think like it doesn't know the difference, but that
Well, maybe it could never be as fine as bad as it actually could be. But I'm convinced you can at least, make yourself imagine how bad it would be. You can like think, what is acting apart from getting yourself in a state of arousal which wouldn't possibly be real?
But this goes back to my like kind of blue canvas kind of thing. It's like if I've experienced loads of sad experiences, then it changes. If I've only ever experienced one sad thing, then let's represent that as the color blue. Then it's the standard color blue. But if if I've had loads of different sad experiences, then it's all these different colored blues that change the whole experience of what my sadness is. Because the same thing you could say, like the imagination of something.
Yeah.
If I want to imagine a cow with 8 legs, I imagine it based on my prototype of what a cow is. If you get what I mean.
Okay. Yeah.
So it has to be rooted in, I guess, what I've experienced.
Yeah. I guess one of the points you're trying to make in my head there is also this idea that the more different nuances in regards to like degrees of sadness you've had, you can have different language for it, or different, not even different colors to express it rather than different language is probably the better, where you were heading with it more.
Which is interesting in terms of music, because if someone who hasn't had a lot of those experiences, but then they make a song, and then someone listens to it who does have loads of experiences, I wonder what that kind of perception of it is. Or
I wonder if a lot of the movies and story listening to is actually essentially us trying to explore different emotional states, and we kind of get a kick out of it to sort of be sad and be happy, and the movie itself almost manipulates states. I don't know. Well, I would technically, it definitely does do that. But whether or not that's the attraction of it
interesting, isn't it? Yeah. I do think there is something there in terms of like training your internal gauge, or your synchronicity with your emotions. Yeah.
It's funny as well, because if you really think about it, as the language you use breaks up emotions into things, but how are you to know what happy and sad is? We think we know what it is, but we don't. And also, like you said, there's many degrees. You could be very sad, you could be not sad. There's also no words in between. Or I guess there is, but if you extend your vocabulary enough to do like stuff like melancholy and whatever, like manic, you're so fucking happy all the time.
And then how do you know if what you're feeling is that definition, right? Like I find it interesting, like how do you know what you're feeling unless you compare it to someone else or a definition, right? Like my sadness is different from your sadness. And if you tried to express your sadness to me, it would only be based off my subjective interpretation of what sadness is.
Yeah.
Right. So you could try and describe it as well as you can, but I can only imagine it based on what my idea of sadness is.
And also so another interesting one is like, if I said to you, somebody died I knew, and it was like a relative, and you didn't have a close relative who was that, like let's say it was a cousin, right? And you were close with your cousins, I wasn't. You'd be like, oh my God, that must be the most terrible thing. And I'd be like, well, and if I wasn't close, I'd be like, oh no, it's not really. And you think I'm a psychopath, but it's in reality, everybody has a different sort of relationship with everybody. Yeah. So like some people are like, oh, you must be absolutely devastated. Be like, well, not really. But not in that exact
cold-hearted bastard.
No, but you know what I mean. It's the same thing with almost every experience. Everybody, if somebody's had it bad, they'll be like, "Oh my God, that must be terrible." You're like, "Well, no," because it's not quite. Yeah,
it's interesting.
It is indeed.
What's been at the front of your mind recently?
Oh fucking hell! Apart from work. Or did a lot of that reading around the pandemic and sort of the use of fear in behavior. Could go into that. That's a pretty big rabbit hole in itself. I think we'd probably be on the call for a while.
Yeah. What is it? The fear of the what's it called? The fear state? Is that?
Yeah, a state of fear.
State of fear.
Yeah. It's it's not the best. Probably the fact. Let me just go to a bit more, not lighthearted, but I thought it was really quite interesting in the Shatter's Assumptions book. She talks about the 3 fundamental assumptions that we all kind of have as the guiding factor of our lives, and that is, the world is benevolent, relatively, like the world is good,
Yeah.
the world is meaningful, therefore everything sort of connects and makes sense. For example, if somebody's living on the streets, it's because they're bad. But like the meaning comes from the fact that like there's no randomness. So if something bad happens to somebody, there's meaning in it because they've done something bad, right? We like to believe that. And then the other one was this, like the self is worthy, or that you're worthy in general. I didn't particularly like that one as much. I like the other two. I think most people do think everything's good in general, and they do like to believe things make sense. Sorry, did I cut out then?
No, I got you.
But I keep going after. It's just a weird name. I remember what's her name? Ronnie Janoff Bullman. That's it. Oh shit. But it's really interesting the point she made that. So, we talked about it before with like hierarchies of assumptions, the hierarchies of, like you have at the very top, like good cook, bad cook, and then at the very bottom, good person, bad person, like,
yeah,
which kind of like goes up. Talks about how these fundamental ones are set from childbirth, and the reason why they're set from a really young age is because back to like what's the theory? Attachment theory. So you come out, your caregiver's really great to you. So basically, all your experiences when you're really young, unless of course something really bad happens to you, are that somebody's there to care for you. Somebody is, every time you do something, like you cry, they come to you. So what else? The self being worthy comes from, every time you want something, your parent tends to give it to you, whatever. So basically, all these assumptions come from really early experience where, you're the everything you do sort of gathers attention. Everything's taken care of, so everything's great. You don't have the experience of like fending for yourself, and that's, I guess, the course becoming an adult comes after that.
Yeah.
I thought it was really interesting how like that's her argument for how, in general, these core assumptions that the world's good and everything come from just from early experience. Because this is back to your point of like sadness and stuff. In regards to you have to experience it first and have a comparison too. And the reason why everybody in general, as long as you've had a really nice caregiver, has these like sort of more positive views of the world is because of that. And then obviously then you can start to explain why people who've had trauma from a young age or not had the correct care have a more lens of like, so they didn't have the emotional stability from the attachment theory or from being stuff given to them, and obviously then projected onto this world that everything is relatively good. They get what they want or whatever. You can understand how if you've had a traumatic experience or something goes wrong in the past, you can be a bit off kilter, and then therefore you can't overall have an assumption. You could end up with the assumption that everybody's bad. If that makes sense.
Well, that makes sense. So does she give an opinion on whether it's like good or bad, or it's like it's needed, like these three kind of assumptions? Because if she
does, actually, she says it's good. She says they're good because they're overarchingly positive to live a good life. So for example, in the sense of if you believe the world is benevolent in general, you're more likely to go out and try and do things. Because if you were to believe that everything was going to go wrong and you were like a schizophrenic, so that's paranoid, you wouldn't do stuff. So she argues that these core assumptions are like good, and you should be aware that they're assumptions, that there is bad out there. But as a driving force for life, seeing the world as actually generally good, seeing it as meaningful as well, helps you sort of deal with the sort of randomness. Because
does she talk about nihilism then?
I haven't got that far into it. So the first chapter was just talking about the assumptions, how they came about from childbirth. She then argues similar to Peterson, which I assume is where he actually got his idea from, this idea of like the assumption tree. So like the assumptions of good, evil, and stuff at the very bottom. And as you build it up, you start having like your own behavior and stuff at the top. But these things are like very at the bottom, like they guide your worldview in general. Let's see if I've got anything on it.
It's interesting, actually. Like I had a thought about, well, not a thought. I was watching a video, I think it was about like journaling or something. And this guy was quite preachy, but there was a quote I think that he had, and it was like, you need to feel worthy of something to have it. And it like ties into the other third one that you had. And like normally I've never really thought about worthiness. But it was quite interesting that like to get the most out of something, it would kind of make sense that you have to almost be in harmony with it, right? Like you feel deserving of it, and that like you can use it to its best, right? It's like, what was the note that I made? If you aren't in line with what you want or have, there's going to be a disparity between how you feel about having it and whether you should actually have it, which I thought was just kind of, it's just kind of interesting. It's like you want something, but like, are you really going to make the most of it? You know, do I feel like I should make the most of it, which is normally what we should do, is very stoic in the sense that, like, you know, you give your highest self or 100% of yourself to something. But then I guess if you don't feel like you're deserving of it for whatever sense, like for instance, like let's take nepotism for an example, right? Like, you know, someone else, they're up for a film, but I know someone who gets me in the door before them, and I've got a higher likelihood of getting the job, right? Do I feel deserving of it?
Yeah.
And I guess in a way, the best way to kind of deal with something is to try and convince yourself that you are, to a degree.
Yeah.
You know?
Okay. Yeah, no, I get you. I would say so. I'm quite like that. I wouldn't want to get the easy run in for something. Yeah. You want to say you've at least tried to get what you want. But then that comes down to like individuals. Yeah.
I just found it interesting because I don't think I'd ever really thought of being worthy of something. Yeah. Maybe. Yeah. I don't know. Interesting.
No, I quite like that. I think that speaks more of the character of the person in terms of whether I think people who perennially feel unworthy tend to do better in life because they're always trying to find their worth. Weird as that sounds. They're more motivated to find their own self-worth. And I think that's also a very slippery slope as well, because you can always never find your worth and then get depressed. So I think there's always that borderline between depression and happiness that you have to be traversing to be the most successful.
Well, exactly. And I think it's about, in a way, it's kind of like understanding your point A in relation to like your Jordan Peterson. It's like, you know, if you know where you are, and I guess the reverse of it is like, to be worthy of something kind of shows a trajectory. It's like, if I want that, I've got to be worthy of that. So it shows a trajectory of what I want. Yeah. You know, if I understand what I am worthy of.
Well, as you would say, a value structure. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And it kind of like shows you what you really want rather than like just, you know.
Well, if you really want it, you put in the effort to get it there, right? Is that kind of the sort of mindset there?
So. Yeah, exactly.
I think another interesting, kind of linked to that a little bit. Actually, not really. It's still from this shattered assumption. I think you'll quite like this because this is talking about like how you develop, I guess, your assumptions in a weird way. Mm-hmm. So she talks about this idea that when you experience very similar episodes of similar chunks of behavior, similar experiences, let's just say, that you begin to form like a generalized episode. Yeah, like the prediction, like how we obviously perceive most things now in terms of like, basically the argument is here, this is where the beginning of abstraction happens, where you basically abstract from a scenario something, like some overall good feeling. So like, for example, when you associate like food, you associate pleasure, like it kind of, the pleasure itself.
That's interesting.
So basically, it's then she talks about episodic memories. So these generalized memories of like, so for example, with breast milk, it might, you think of hunger and then breast milk, whatever. It makes it like the experience prototypic. That's what she says. And then episodic memories are combined into RIGs, and I can't remember what that stands for. But then these RIGs then actually end up becoming these working models, like the models of the world, the way it works. And so these models are generalized memories derived from particular episodes.
So an assumption, an abstraction is still technically an association
to an experience, but it's like you abstract it out. So
like a meta.
So this is almost weirdly as well why you can go in and change past memories, because if you can try and reopen up this past episode and then plug in a new feeling, you can kind of imagine how you can distort specific things. And this is I actually reckon, in fact, I'm thinking out loud now, this is why the Peterson idea of like when you get somebody betrays you or whatever, you feel so traumatized, because then beforehand you've been living with this generalized abstraction of who this person is, and then this new thing happens, so then you have to plunge back into every single episode you've ever had with them and reevaluate the whole thing. And that's why it's so destabilizing, because you realize that whole trail of like belief has now just crumbled.
So then are your abstractions constantly changing then? Because let's say there's an abstraction to like food, right, which is pleasure. And so you have obviously a lot of experiences, so it's probably getting more and more ingrained. But then, you might have ones
the point the point there is what she was talking about, the Piaget sort of assimilation via accommodation. So you can have the assimilation, or you can have the accommodation where it like swaps. So you accommodate to the new information. And she basically, her argument is trauma comes when your very bottom level assumptions are destroyed, and that is almost why the trauma of also like a breakup as well can be traumatic, or some false news about a friend can be traumatic, because you're going very deep into a reality that you believe to be true and distorting it, if that makes sense. So these abstractions create like a chain of beliefs which isn't real, and then you've basically gone deep down into one and tore it out, and then you have to rebuild that up, and that's why it's traumatic.
Well, this is it, and you like build so much upon that, you know.
I saw a fantastic quote on, I can't remember where else. Let me find it for you. This guy basically riffed on like how we all live in our own worlds. That's it. We all live, as Prescott Lecky wrote, immersed in an environment which he does not and cannot understand. The individual is forced to create a substitute world which he can understand and which he puts his faith in. He acts in consistency with that conception, derives his standards of value from it, and undertakes to alter it only when convinced by further experience that it fails to serve the goal of unity. Since this self-made scheme of life is only a guarantee of security, it soon becomes a goal in itself. So this idea of like we create our own separate reality, and then it becomes a goal in itself to upkeep.
The Goddard's law, isn't it?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
But I thought it was really quite
interesting. But it does make sense. It's like, you know, you've got this blank canvas that you can't understand unless you attribute kind of your perception and attention to it and what meaning to it. Which is why, like, I guess that's why nihilism does occur when you don't see the meaning in life, you know?
Yeah. I guess so. Yeah, I mean, that's like the almost opposite, isn't it? The opposite end of the spectrum, because obviously, it's like the fundamental assumption that life has some particular goal or meaning and that it's all going to work out. Yeah. I guess that's that's an attack on one of the core assumptions.
I might get that book, actually.
Get it, mate. It's really good. I'm only 2 chapters in, mate. It's the first one. So the first one's about the fundamental assumptions. So like the 3, and it explains why we produce them. Then the second chapter is called Cognitive Conservatism, and it talks about schemas, and it talks about, like I said to you before, this idea of, she says that we're deductivists, not inductivists. So as much as we like to think, we look at stuff through the lens of the previous information. And like we said earlier about science, you know, you're looking at it from your perspective of things you want to confirm at all times, because think about it, like Peterson always says, you got an infinite amount of stimuli, so you need to look at specific things. Therefore, you have to constrain what you're looking at. How do you constrain what you're looking at? By coming up with a theory for why that's important to look at in the first place.
But then it just goes to show you how much we kind of we make our own meaning and we justify it.
Yeah.
Like so much, as in, like, you know, we don't see a reason for something, so we make up a reason ourselves and tell us that it's true.
That's how we unify our own, or feel some agency over the world, because otherwise you lose control of it, right?
But this is what I find it scary though, because like, you know, even like through this pandemic, it's like I can justify and I can see so many patterns, and then I can tell myself that it's true. But then if I do that, am I just telling myself that it's true rather than it is true? And it's like, it can lead you down.
Well, you have to have the balance. I think you're also true, but you also need to see that everybody's almost human in the positions that you see, and then you have to figure out what problem they're solving or what their goals are. It's always golden.
I know, but then it makes it hard, because obviously, like, I study psychology and I just see how flawed people are, and you're just like, God, I know everyone's in their position, and I know how flawed everyone is. So
but that's why the John McAfee John McAfee was like, well, he's like, think about everybody. Everybody's got greed. Everybody's got envy. Everybody's got jealousy. Everybody's also got the good emotions, but everybody's got the same thing. Yeah. And then you have to realize that
good thing we're in a society that, you know, prioritizes good values.
Good thing we're in a society with no shared moral values. The society is only decreasing, and the social glue that is morals. I don't know. It's easy to see that side of things. Well, the whole reason of laws originally was to constrain this, you know, humans from ourselves. But then you've got the argument of the paternalism, like, who says that should be the right way to behave, and who says, you know, there's that streak of anarchists and everybody who's like, fuck the rules, we don't need rules. But then you're like, okay, well, if you let everything go to rules. Yeah, well, we do need rules, but then who sets the rules, right?
Yeah.
And then you can go full
rules?
circle. Exactly, you go around full circle. Who benefits from what rules? Who gets punished by what rules?
The problem is the rules are so static.
It's an imperfect game. I don't think you ever find a solution.
No, you won't. Well, it's constantly changing, so you constantly have to have a solution that is changing.
Yeah, exactly. And then also you'd have to get agreement from a wide amount of people. So and then everybody wants to keep in the same position they're in. Nobody wants to give up their lot. That's it. Institutions want to keep themselves to survive, but I think we'll probably end it there before we spiral into.
Yeah, I was about to say. All right. Yeah, and that's a wrap.
That is a wrap.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that, guys. And remember, if you haven't already subscribed, now is the time to do so. We are bringing out a new podcast every Wednesday, as well as our new YouTube series, Bite Size Books. So do go and check it out. Also, keep your eyes posted on our website as we upload a new book summary every week. Anyways, enough of that. Until next time, stay wise, people.